The sky over Sanctus Ferrum breaks like a bone. What begins as a tremor in the firmament becomes a white seam, a razor-straight rift that draws the eye from horizon to horizon. Smog-sunk spires lift their pinnacles toward it as if to pierce and let out the pressure. But the seam widens of its own appetite. Violet fringes flare. The air tastes of singed copper. Alarm bells ring through hive levels, their clangor caught and multiplied by steel naves and lift galleries. In manufactoria courtyards, workers freeze with hot rivet guns still spitting steam. Pilgrims in patchwork aquilas drop to their knees and press foreheads to ash-warm flagstones. The thermal shield domes that keep the wind's chemical teeth at bay shiver with stress, pearlescent bands racing across their curvature like fish. Out beyond the nested rings of hab stacks and cathedral towers, far above the impact-kissed plates that pass for Earth here, the void-ward batteries of the planetary defense bastions swing their muzzles upward. Targeting runes flicker and fail and flicker again as machine spirits whine at the new geometry of the sky. Something is coming through. It arrives not as one thing, but as many, a formation emerging from light itself. A woman with dark hair bound by a tiara, like a golden chevron, spears down through the air ahead of the rest. A blue and scarlet comet holding a rope that glows with an unsteady sun. Beside her follows a green lattice that is at once everything and nothing. Ramps and braces and angled planes that fold as they fall, carrying within them a figure whose eyes see faster than thought. A red streak stitches the wind into a needle. A man in black rides the fall in a shape of his own making, gothic, sharp, like a flying sigil of contradiction. And at their center, below the tearing ribbon of light, there is a man who drops weightless and lands without impact. The sound of him touching the world, swallowed by the collective intake of breath. He sets down in a plaza, paved with plates, stamped with the icon of the double-headed eagle. He is tall. He wears blue like a statement of intent, and his cape, red as fresh-dyed velvet, hangs motionless even in the wind's frantic pull. On his chest is a diamond-shaped crest with a flourish that is also a letter. When he raises his head, the soot in the air rushes a fraction toward him as if drawn by his breath. All eyes go to him. The rift narrows above, but it does not close. It stretches, like something flexing a new joint, testing angles. From its brightness, debris hails down. Chunks of not stone, not metal, falling toward hab stacks, cableways, the thermal domes that keep 2 million from choking on their days. The man in blue rises without kicking off. He wills himself upward. He finds the first boulder-sized shard with his hands and stops it. The impact ripples the air in concentric rings. He breathes, and frost laces his palm. The shard cracks. He fists the halves together like a sculptor breaking flawed marble. Pieces tumble. Below, a crowd screams. The woman with the tiara vaults onto a broken buttress as if on a palace step. The rope in her hand flares. She snaps it at a falling slab, and where it touches, the slab gleams as if truthful, then halts against invisible restraint. The green lattice becomes a dome over a schoolyard. The red streak resolves into a man whose body is a shorthand for speed, spidering from impact to impact, and moving the small things first. A child in a yellow scarf. A pilgrim hunched around a candle guttering its last. A riveter's hands frozen around a spitting gun. He's there and gone. People only know he was, because the world they were in is different by one increment. The difference between crushed and upright. The man in black lands on a gantry overlooking a tram chute. He doesn't look up. He looks at the ground. His eyes catalog rail width, support braces, structural redundancies mapped by habit. He drops black shapes from his belt, and they ride along rails, jittering, their small spirits angry and dutiful. When they stick to anchor points, the gantry braces itself, moving like a living thing, to unburden a structure that should never have borne so much weight. The sky keeps breaking. The man in blue closes his eyes and inhales. The air is laden with poisons, but he has tasted worse. He exhales upward, and the cone of his breath reaches the seam, a pale thread opposing violet. Ice blooms on the falling shards faster than gravity can explain. He moves in lines, not arcs. Every line a choice with a cost he can calculate standing still. When the last fractured boulder would have smashed a pilgrimage fountain into pewter crumbs, he is there. Hands under, arms out, stance wide, the stone weightless. Because he wills it so, he lays it down like an offering. The fountain's upthrust spear, a statue of a warrior with an eagle on his chest, rings at a frequency he cannot hear, but can feel. A wing of the planetary defense bastion opens its teeth and fires into the sky, but the gunners know enough to target away from the newcomers. Their rounds branch into flak trees that burst before dangerous pieces can find roofs. Bells continue to ring. Collision. Then all clear. Then collision again. The sound becomes more complicated. Horns layered over bells. Then the harsh drone of war sirens, whose harmonics force a person to clench their teeth. From the east, over the train of manufactoria chimneys, something else comes. Dots that lengthen into dagger shapes. Hulls ribbed and painted in a language of conquest. The atmosphere around Sanctus Ferrum glows with re-entry. Streaks like scratches in varnish. Those hulls are not the planet's own. They fall at a vector that is intimacy to a different meaning of assault. Inside high spire command rooms, where the windows are screens and the screens are windows, status reports scroll like prayers. The Vox picks up nothing. No machine language, no imperial code. Lord Governor, the Lord Governor Voss, thin as a sprue of pewter, hair braided like sacrificed rope, stands at the forward table. The table is also a screen. The screen is also a map. He grips the edge and the knuckles show like pebbles. Behind him, the stained glass of the founding depicts a man as tall as a cathedral, blessing men as small as candle stubs. A woman in black lacquered market armor stands at his left, her shoulders hunched forward with the habit of a hunter. Her badge is a rosette, the kind that opens doors that are not there yet. Her eyes are unreadable, and in the reflection of her iris, arcs of fire cross the world. Unknowns within the shield, unknowns above the shield, unknowns below. This is a day, she says. Inquisitor, the governor says. With respect, I am going to assume providence. You may assume what keeps you upright, she says. We will secure proof. The dagger ships dump ballast of living murder. They open bellies and drop shapes that burn. When those shapes strike, the sound is not impact, but appetite. There is a smell, a note like tin blood sprinkled on the wind, and then a noise that is laughter, if laughter forgot its joke. The man in blue is already moving. The woman with the tiara does not ask what to do. Her rope thrums in her hand, answering a question that the world asked when it was made. The red man, who winks and calls to the black one and gets no call back, finds himself at the base of a cathedral step. Pilgrims swarm up the stone as if altitude were safety, and he becomes lanes among legs, adjusting their vectors with 2 fingers at a time, running hands-on logistics. The green lattice reconfigures into a bridge between hab stacks for an evacuation corridor he is already calculating load for, and the man in black, whose jaw is a blade-given skin, speaks into a machine to people none of the others can see. He says, the voice smooth as oiled obsidian, unknown city, unknown chain of command, unknown threat. Begin standard footprint containment. They answer him. They aren't here, but he speaks as if they are. Because to admit, even to himself, that they are not here would be to let a thing into his mind that he keeps in a box locked with his own name. The first enemy strikes. They are not men, or they were, but null inscriptions were made in them. Their flesh has been written over in an alphabet made of thirst. Their guns are mouths. They laugh the way a wound laughs when it is forced open. They are chaotics in colors that make the air feel pre-used. Indigo lacquer with eye motifs, glittering teeth carved into pauldrons that move, the metallic stink of warp ozone. The woman with the tiara meets the first at the fountain. He swings a chain that hums in a register her ears name wrongness. She ducks. The chain spits sparks on stone, and her bracelet takes the follow-up like a greeting. He aims a barrel that is also a tongue. She grabs barrel and tongue in one fist and peels. The weapon howls. She flips him into the fountain. The water hisses and becomes mist. The statue above watches, unjudging. Around her, the air sings faintly. The sort of hum that accompanies the truth being spoken near steel. The man in blue doesn't fight as often as he moves. He takes guns from hands with a precision that should not be possible, given the speed. Bits of gun come off in a sequence that leaves the enemy's balance intact, long enough for him to push them into positions where they will not kill anything by accident. When he must strike, he does so with finite rulings. Knees, wrists, elbows. It is not that he is sparing them. It is that he knows the economy of breaking. The green constructs become stretchers, then box launchers that fire other constructs that tie themselves around looters' wrists. The red streak is gone and present and gone again. And wherever he goes, seconds later, a child begins to cry, because fear and relief feel similar in the throat. The man in black moves to the bastion battery, because guns are arguments, and he wants to decide which words the planet says first. The High Spire command room is a different fight. The Rosette woman, Inquisitor Severine Hale, watches the newcomers through the tactical feed like a cat watching water. The Lord Governor watches the same video and sees only that the statues did not fall and that the people can climb the steps. He breathes out and back in, and some deep part of him stops screaming. Then the room brightens as someone lands uninvited in a geometry of soft, absolute control. The man in blue appears not by being carried. He is there because he intends to be. Two red glowing points fade from his eyes. "Hello," he says. There is no translation. Their words meet in the middle, a machine god klaxon of self-correction, and find they were never different. The Lord Governor knows very well that he should kneel, because no one can do what this man does unless empowered by something that demands kneeling. Being a politician is a constant calculation. This calculation is simple. He bows. "In the Emperor's name," he says, and hopes certainty will hide his guess. "I am Lord Governor Cale Voss of Sanctus Ferrum. You have my gratitude." The Inquisitor does not bow. She rests her gloved hands on the tactical table. "Identify," she says. He inclines his head. "My name is Kal-El. On this world or yours, I think Superman will do. We've stopped some of the debris. My team is containing the ground assault. There are hostile ships inbound. Pronouncements rehearsed," she says. "No record, no cogita, no heraldry, no field chaplain, no gene mark. Yet you move with a purpose that suggests doctrine. You will understand. I regard that as a paradox, to be pried open." "Later," he says, and smiles as if he means it. The smile works in rooms where life is a matter of keeping one's face still. It moves in the way light moves across a blade. "Right now, I'm going to put those hostile ships into a holding pattern that doesn't end a city." He goes. She watches the space where he was and thinks, very mildly, that she is not certain whether he is a weapon disguised as a man, or a man disguised as a weapon. The distinction matters in only one way. A weapon has no say. At the bastion, the man in black, whose name in his world is an animal people fear only because it moves in their walls, leans into a bank of dials and brings his voice into the guts of the world. "Admiral," he says, assuming there is one, "this is an allied asset inside your point defense grid." There is a pause. Then a man's voice answering whose grammar is the grammar of long discipline. "This is Admiral Lucerne, Segmentum Tempestus Fleet Attachment. Identify asset, or I vent the compartment you're in to satisfy protocol." "Batman," he says. Is that a title or a confession? Today, he flicks a control, and the defense grid takes his hand. It's a solution. The dagger ships in the sky vector for a low pass and then lift, confused, as if they have hit a warm updraft that was not in their calculus. Above them, a small shape lifts as if weightless, red cape drawn like a banner behind him. He passes the lead ship, and the hull ripples. He grips, not metal, but intention clothed in metal, and peels. The ship opens like a fruit. Bodies fall into the middle air. He moves and catches what bodies he can. The man in green sends constructs to catch the rest. A net, a platform, 100 platforms. The man in red runs from platform to platform, as if the air were shelves. They are cultists, Inquisitor Hale says. It is not a worry. It is a diagnostic. If they live, they will kill again, because every breath they draw feeds what we burn worlds to starve. On the plaza, a cultist coughs and rolls onto his belly and tries to bite a pilgrim's ankle bone clean through. A boot descends onto his wrist. The woman with the tiara breaks the man's teeth with the edge of her hand. Her eyes are sea. She says, "No." Behind the high spire windows, the Lord Governor says, "Praise the throne." The Inquisitor says, "Praise is receipt. Proof is in fire." On a drifting ruin of a ship, the man in blue, Cal, hears both in the little device by his ear, because the man in black is a spider who spins webs without silk. Cal says, a little iron in his voice, the correct number of bodies is as few as possible. He turns and sears a chain gun off a mount with the red from his eyes. The first wave breaks with less blood than anyone here has ever seen a wave break with. That makes the next noise louder. From the high edges of the world, deep lights waver. The void shudders. Voss's tactical screen pings and pings again, then draws a new sigil, a curve threaded with stars. Translation, someone says. Translation inside the defense shell. In-system translation. By the throne. A belly forms in the sky, and from it come ships that are not simple things, in vacuum, but arrangements of cruelty that in the warp also smell like incense. Their hulls are red, the particular red of arterial spray dried and repainted with devotion. Brass knuckles a planet's circumference reach from prow to stern. On the twin spines of their flagships perch icons that are also mouths. Their prows burn with sigils that do not know they cannot be read. If the first wave was a laughing wound, this is a butcher who no longer laughs, because laughter would cheapen the work. The man in blue looks at them, and for an instant, no more. He feels very far from any sun. He says, "New ships, heavier." Admiral Lucerne's voice hardens into ice. "Those are no mere reavers. That is a traitor host with mark of the Vastian Covenant. Those guns will unmake our shells by rehearsal. If you can, if you are what you boast, stop them. I can divert them," Cal says. "Hold their fire. Give people time to reach cover. You will fail." Inquisitor Hale says, voice crisp as a flint's. "Know it now, and choose your ground well. Mercy in the face of blasphemy is a word knives love." Cal does not answer. He turns and goes, because debate is a luxury you afford a world only after you keep it intact for the length of the debate. He meets the first macro shell mid-air and holds it. Heat sears the hair on his arms. His hearing detaches from his body for a breath and stands apart, listening to the structure of the shell and what it wants to do. He pushes, not against mass, but against a decision a machine made when a hand told it to. The shell veers. He throws it at a ship whose side bristles with the guns like a hedgehog of blame. The impact stutters. It is not enough. He accelerates, body a line of intent, and hits the ship where aesthetic meets support. Brass screams. The ship lists, tooth mouths vomiting bog fire into vacuum. Below, the ground fight has become less brawl, more procession. The woman with the tiara and the man in green carve corridors for panicked humanity. The red one, Barry, laughs to keep his heart from looking down. The man in black builds systems out of strangers. He looks at a barricade and knows whether it will stand. He looks at a man and knows whether he will. He posts them to themselves. Inquisitor Hale watches his work and thinks, this man serves something he believes in. It would be useful to know what. Near the fountain, a wounded cultist wheezes words the air itself rejects. He coughs up a slab of darkness, shaped like a knife not yet named. The woman with the tiara steps back, and because she was born where gods were instruction, she recognizes a thing that can teach. The knife becomes a man. No, a more certain article. A man. His horns are suggestions. His wings are arthritic dream bones. His armor is not hammered. It is grown from oaths. He lands lightly, and the stone under his feet chooses to become a dais. The fountain boils. The statue moans in its metal. He smiles. His smile is a hook behind the breastbone. Kal-El, he says. His voice is silk shaved with bone. The multiverse is a book I have been licking for 1,000 years. I like the way your name tastes. The man in blue drops with the sound of air being parted. He lands half a breath later than he meant to, and the demon prince notices that. You, Cal says. Yes, the demon says. He cocks his head as if listening to the root traffic of a forest. Aknothrax of the Given Nine, herald of the covenant, he who unthreads certitudes. I bring gifts. He draws a sword that is more like an argument. Its blade is script that reads itself out loud into the world. This is the Paraclete. It does not cut what you are. It cuts what you think you are. Cal steps forward. Wonder Woman, Diana, moves with him. She looks at the demon and tightens her hands on the rope in a motion that is also a prayer. Batman moves as if to flank, and the demon acknowledges him with a half-turn that is a compliment. The Paraclete kisses the air, and the air recoils. Cal meets it with his forearm and expects heat like re-entry, and gets something else. A loss of names. For an instant, he does not remember Kansas. For an instant, he is not sure the letter on his chest is a letter. The blade leaves a line across his skin, not red, but conceptual, a subtraction. He staggers. The Paraclete cuts again, and the world tilts. Diana blocks, crossing bracers. The impact warps sound. The plaza stones hump up like bared backs. Barry is suddenly on his face because friction was given to someone else, not to him. The demon's blade is a lens for the warp to look through, and where it looks, the things you are by rehearsal fall away. In the high spire, Inquisitor Hale says, "This is the wound I waited for." Admiral Lucerne, Grey Knights on the line. "We are a dust of a chapter," a new voice replies in chorus, its harmonics threaded with storm iron. "We come." Cal tries to push through numbness. His hand is heavy. He cannot remember what it can do. He looks at Aknothrax and sees reflected nothing, not hatred. That would be a relation. Not contempt. A simple joy in unbuilding. He could end this like he ends certain things, by increasing force until denial becomes collapse. But the blade that writes lies as truth is not interested in mass or speed. He needs another sentence. He says, "What do you want?" "To help you," Aknothrax says, sweet as the spoon. "To optimize. You are a pretty lie told into a hard world. In your furnace you see fuel. Let me give you a city that never crowds its own dead. Your friend in black has a list titled Acceptable Losses. You do not. Give me your list. I will write your name at the top, so you can be done making it." Cal hears the words, and they come pre-flattered, which is a sign. He steps into the swings because he knows he must risk the thing that is most him in order to save persons he does not know. The Paraclete cuts him along his ribs, and the pain is not agony, but a humiliation. A loss of a word he built a life around. Enough. For an instant he is not enough. The blade eats at that not enough and fattens. Diana snarls. No goddess now, just a woman who hates an idea, and her rope blossoms like lightning. It catches the demon's wrist. Where it touches, The blade stops seeing itself as sovereign. For an instant, it sees itself as a blade, which is to say as a thing with a job. It remembers the morality inherent in being a tool. It shudders, as if ashamed. Batman throws something that sticks to the blade and sings notes he spent a year learning in a monastery he did not believe in. The Paraclete hungrily eats the song, and chokes, and slows. And then a bell rings in the world below hearing. Men in silver armor step out of air that was made to forget them. They are purposeful, the way a phrase from a good sermon is purposeful. A librarian in their midst shapes his hands in signs older than metaphor. The demon looks at them and bares his teeth, not because he fears them, but because he knows he will have to pay attention while he kills them, and he resents the attention. In the name of him on Terra, says the librarian, and his voice is not request. Begone, weakness, the demon smiles. Named holiness. Boundary, the librarian corrects. His force halberd carves an arc, and the air around its blade is not air, but answer. The world becomes ritual. Incense burns in lungs. The exorcist organs of an order militant choir set up in a side street and lob hymns in physical shells that burst into litany. The Paraclete is sick with too much theology. The lasso burns. Batman's devices hurt in ways that are not mechanical, and the demon, who had wanted to match a man against his own thesis, is drawn back. Not slain, because death here is often a point of view, but removed. He leaves part of himself behind. It writhes on the stone and becomes a book, bound in the leather of something that once tried to be righteous. The book opens and shuts, and whispers and spits ash. Cal sways. Blood does not run where the blade cut him. He touches his ribs and feels not a wound, but a missing shelf. He does not remember his first lesson with his father in the field, where the tractor coughed more than it turned. This is an arrogance, to forget that much. He finds it by force. He imagines the smell of hay and the line of his father's arm when pointing west. The line does not come. Diana's hand is on his shoulder. "You're here," she says, reminding him of the smallest, best thing. "We're here." He nods. The nod is an act of will. Inquisitor Hale watches the feed and knows that whatever spoke today will speak again, if not answered. She keys a code that opens doors in other cities inside this city. She calls. Across the segmentum, whisper fast. Other calls answer. There are certain protocols for guests who arrive with swords that cut people's meanings. Chief among these is that you do not let them dictate when the next conversation happens. On the plaza, the librarian approaches Cal with the measured courtesy one extends to a hive with many insects in it. Some pollinating, some biting. "You are touched by it," he says. "Not a taint the apothecaries know. A subtraction." Cal nods again. It is easier now. He looks at the silver-armored men and sees not only men, but an institution. A series of decisions that trained them to be in this place doing this thing. He respects institutions when they treat persons as ends, not means. He's not sure this one does, but he cannot mistake their dignity. "Thank you," he says. "We thanked ourselves when we were made," the librarian says, and his mouth moves as if a smile tried to remember itself. "Do not mistake necessity for generosity. Come." They bring him not to a hospital, but to a chapel. Batman bristles. Chapels are where we put our helplessness to work. He prefers labs. The chapel has no pews. It has racks of tinctures that are both habits and chemicals. It has a reliquary of nails hammered into a plank that could not possibly have supported anything heavy, and yet did, if belief can change mass. The Sisters of Silence move around Cal like a breeze made of disinterest. They mute the air with their presence. In their shadow, the buzz of his hearing drops away, something missing in impulses, as if noticing itself. Inquisitor Hale comes in the back and watches without being looked at. When the Medici tech priest lifts a humming tube toward Cal's ribs, she says, "Stop." Her voice is a scalpel. The tech priest halts mid-ritual. Batman tenses because he recognizes the posture of a person about to be right. Diana's hand is still on Cal's shoulder, fastening him to the moment. You will now accompany a convoy to the center of what you take for granted, Hale says. Terra, the throne, the only authority that can decide whether to treat you as an ally, a threat, or a tool. Cal meets her eyes. If I say no, he murmurs, do your shells have my name printed on them already? Our shells do not bear names, she says. Our prayers do. Terra, Diana says under her breath. The word feels like a coin taken in trade, valued by everyone because everyone has killed to get it. Batman doesn't look away from Hale. We're invited, he says dryly. How considerate. This is not an invitation, Hale says. It is a summons. The city of Sanctus Ferrum lives. That is a victory. But the sound of it living is quieter now. An intake through teeth. The planetary vox speaks softly of casualty numbers that a man might read as statistics, and a woman might hear as a choir. Cal looks toward the door where the sisters have gone. He thinks of the book that gluts itself on ash and lies, and he thinks of the missing shelf in his head where a father should be pointing west. Terra, he says. All right, they leave as pageantry dictates. Not under cover of night, but under the obligation of day. The ship is a cathedral turned inside out. Buttresses for ribs, stained glass for apertures, runes along the spine that are orders to the universe disguised as poetry. An honor guard of golden men stands like justice imagined. Their faces are neither cruel nor kind. They are precise. The elite escort, they do not call themselves that, but everyone else does, move like the concept of protection given legs. On the dock, Admiral Lucerne salutes without flourish. Lord Governor Voss speaks the only words that matter to a man whose hands were just taught their smallness. Thank you, he says, for the children. Inquisitor Hale boards last. Barry stands on the ramp and looks back at the city with hunger. We could do more, he says. We will do more, Diana answers. Batman does not promise. He marks positions of guns on the ship and calculates ranges. He likes ranges. They tell you where truths end and lies begin. In the chapel aboard, they do not kneel, because the benches are made of machine wood that remembers rituals that no longer exist. A chaplain meets them. His skull helm is not a skull. It is a thesis about mortality. He removes it for a moment out of courtesy and looks very tired and very calm. You are a paradox, he tells Cal. Our paradoxes are usually tried and executed. You are escorted. Because I caught a shell, Cal says. Because you caught what you could, the chaplain corrects. And because you did not finish any of the hurt men. Cal considers the knife he turned aside and the blade that cut him. The choice was easy. Some choose wrongly in easy times. In hard times, almost all do. The chaplain sits, and the sitting is a kind of tension release across an institution. He speaks with Batman in an idiom that is not precisely theology and not quite strategy. Batman asks about jurisdiction, about oversight. The chaplain asks about trust in a world where many of the souls you do good for would murder you in your sleep because a book told them to after they prayed. Diana listens and hears the shape of an old argument we have always had. The geometry of justice versus the path of law. Mid-transit, alarms make their positions various. The navigator's third eye weeps blood and points to a disturbance that is not an eddy, but a cut. Similar to the seam that brought the League here, but angled with intent. The Geller field. The shell that tells the warp no, like a mother tells a child no. Bristles. A mirror, the librarian says, his voice tinged with a contempt he saves for certain artifices. Something made of what we hope we are. It enters without apparent mass, a figure in gold and blue whose chest bears a double-headed eagle arranged into the shape of a diamond letter. His cape is red and tailored to submission. His smile is mathematics. The paragon, Cal, he says, in a voice that knows the taste of names as well as any demon's. Brother. At last. How you weary yourself with saving them one at a time. Cal floats a handspan off the deck. The room becomes a geometry problem. Batman's brain lights up, flares, and does not solve it, because this is not the sort of problem that yields to numbers you can touch. The Paragon steps lightly, as if gravity itself moves to accommodate. "Look what this world offers us," he says, and his hand takes in the ship. Reliquaries, Vox altars, men who would die if ordered. A society tuned for obedience. Install compassion at the top of that machine, and the gears will grind carefully. "Gears grind," Diana says sharply. "That is what they are built for." "They turn," the Paragon says. "What they crush is optional." "Who are you?" Cal asks, though he suspects who you could be if you removed the friction that costs lives. "I am the Empire's answer to you, grown from your echo when you broke the sky. I am sanctioned in a way you are merely tolerated. I am authorized kindness." Batman laughs, a bare knife of a noise. Authorized kindness is a contradiction. Kindness cannot be compelled. Only compliance can, and compliance can save billions, the Paragon says. His eyes, when they glow, do not crackle. They merely accept. See the ledger. See the math. Stop being so American about it. Cal does not know what hurts him more. That there is another him wearing an answer like a medal, or that the answer is seductively efficient. The missing shelf in his ribs whispers, "You could stop keeping lists." "We will reach Terra," the chaplain says, and sets down his skull helm like a boundary stone. "If the warp sends one of our own to tempt us, so be it. Not your own," the Paragon says, almost gentle. "Yours would not refuse gifts because they come wrapped in practice. Consider this. The men in gold down there, they are very nearly you already. Except they kill without the ache that keeps you from sleep. There is an omen in the air, something like a chord struck on a cathedral's ribs. The light in the ship shifts. The librarian flinches as if a hand were laid on his thoughts. The Paragon tilts his head. He doesn't like being interrupted. That is his tell. The omen swells. It is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It is simply a fact arriving. The Astronomicon, the beacon on Terra by which ships kiss reality, flashes more keenly than usual. A note that is not intended for any ears, and yet finds the ears it needs. The Paragon looks toward Terra with a sort of piety that is also a wince. "Ah," he says, and backs away with the respect a soldier pays to a marshal's gaze. "Later then. Bring your boundaries. We will improve them." He bleeds back into a section of warp that did not exist a moment ago, the way a shadow goes when a cloud passes. The librarian breathes out. A dozen men make the sign of the Aquila, without looking at their hands. On approach, Terra fills the window like an old coin. It is not pretty. It is covered in machinery and prayer. Fortified platforms spin like diadems. Battleships move their weight like slow, wet creatures. The Golden Throne is not seen because it is inside everything. The palace is a mountain that a mountain would admit was heavy. The sky above it is clean by law. They descend through lanes stacked like commandments. Valkyries flank them with war angels poised on their wings. The escort of men in gold, the Adeptus Custodes, are not simply guards. They are what you get when a culture decides it will build one perfect man, and then repeats the decision until it has a regiment. They watch the newcomers with the curiosity you reserve for new tools and new threats. They pass beneath arches whose faces are men frozen at the moment of choosing, and whose choice has been made good by their being cast in stone. The halls are very quiet. The solemnity does not ask for response, it imposes it. Cal, Diana, Bruce, Barry, the Green Wielder, John, and one other whose face in this place becomes even less. They're Atlantean. His eyes narrowed as if the air itself were an enemy. Stand in a circle of light that is not a spotlight, and yet leaves shadow outside the ring like a test. They are not told to speak. They are not told to kneel. They simply are in the presence of a thing that is more than a man, but wears a man like a truth. It speaks without speaking, a pressure against the interior of the skull. Not a pain, but an insistence. You are far from home. Cal holds his back straight. He knows tests when he sees them. He will not overperform. He will not underperform. He will not perform in any way that makes him less himself. Yes, you did what you could there. It did good. Thank you. Diana's head tilts, as if listening to something else equally old. Batman's eyes, in reflex, flicker to the corner. There is no corner here. The room is a statement. He looks down instead. Barry wishes for a joke, because jokes are lifelines in still water. You brought your ethic with you. Cal thinks of no killing as a crude line that hides better lines. He thinks of protecting people first and punishing later, because if later never comes, at least they had the protection. He thinks of the blade that cut him and took a word he used to keep time by. He thinks of the Paragon, and it tastes like aspirin, bitter and necessary. I brought a refusal. 3 paths arrange themselves within him, as if someone were laying out a map on his heart. The first is a return, a tunnel home, bright as the seam that ripped the sky. But this one is gentle. It promises to wrap his team and carry them back to streets, with names he knows and laboratories with rules he trusts. It promises a forgetting of the parts of this place that would sand his words empty. He could go back and keep doing good where his symbol has a long history. He tastes the cost. To return is to let this place keep bleeding without him. It is also to let this place continue to draw on those who are used to dripping. It is to lose the cut that taught him where he is. The second is free agent. Remain, untouched by sanction, loved by sufferers, and loathed by those whose power builds on loathing. He would be a third force, rescuing and rebuilding where the state cannot or will not, preaching a doctrine of person first in a world that puts the institution first, because otherwise nothing stands up. He would save many. He would make a schism from mercy. That schism would be paid for in lives of people who cannot afford a second loyalty. The third is sanctioned servant. Swear to someone who may not deserve swearing to and accept reach in exchange for binding. He would become a tool with a say if he insists on one. He would speak for mercy from inside a jaw, made of laws that mock it. He would be permitted to carry people out of the fire with both arms, not just while someone is watching. He would be used in ways he will hate. He will be able to push the machine to grind less and turn more. Cal hears Batman's breath change slightly beside him. The man in black says nothing, but the nothing is articulate. Diana's hand finds Cal's forearm for an instant. The touch does not guide. It steadies. He considers. He cannot pretend he knows this world. He knows this. Do not build another you to be an answer to people's prayers. It is hubris to think your shape fits another world without shaving off a part of them. He says, not with his mouth, but in the same manner the room says, if I serve, I will write conditions. A tilt in the pressure, amusement, perhaps approval. State them. No killing of the helpless. No killing for example. No killing because it is tidy. Mercy where mercy is cheap. Clemency where clemency is costly but just. A new category in your law. The repentant. An amnesty for children whose parents' oaths bind them. A commutation for mutants who can be taught not to turn the warp into weapons. Give me schools, not pits. In exchange, I will stand where the shells fall the worst. I will pull your soldiers out when your wars deserve no more dead. I will be your hand when your other hands are full. If you ask me to become your knife, I will refuse where refusal is still a kind of service. Batman's eyes narrow. He cannot help it. It is a good negotiation. He notes the concession buried in it. Cal will not refuse everything that deserves refusal. He will carry the weight. The pressure grows exquisite. The thing on the throne does not listen the way men do. Its listening is a devotion. It does not promise. It simply exists as a promise fulfilled so many times, the bones of it cannot break. Boundaries accepted, it says. And the relief is as dangerous as the fear was. There will be places where your mercy causes a wound to fester. There will be places where your refusal saves what is beautiful. We are a world made of blood price. You will pay. We will help you pay without wasting it. Something touches Cal's chest. It is not hands. It is a decision. The emblem there, the letter inside the diamond, thickens, refracts, splits into two heads that face opposite ways and share an eye. No, not split, joined. An aquila and a letter folded together, so that from one angle this place claims him, and from another he continues to be the one who landed by tearing the sky open to save people he did not know. He breathes out and feels the missing shelf return. It does not fill as if nothing happened. The scar is the shelf now. His father's arm points west with a tremor. That is fine. Men with perfect arms do not teach as well. Diana nods once. She looks at the custodian who never moved and sees, for an instant, a human under the gold. Batman closes his eyes and opens them again and says, like a man telling his friend to pick the smaller poison, "All right," Barry whispers, "you did good." Because sometimes praise is necessary, even inside judgment. John taps the transformed emblem with a knuckle. "Nice branding," he says. Because levity is compression and decompression in hard air. No kneeling, the pressure from the throne adds. It is either humor or a new policy. Rise. They rise because they had not knelt. The League returns to the ship, not as prisoners and not as heroes. They return as servants with conditions. There is a difference. Batman carries it in his spine. He has a list titled Acceptable Losses. He adds a column titled Boundaries. The campaign begins. They are given a mandate called Crusade, because names are heavy here. Cal frowns at the word and does not change it, because it is not his. He will make it mean what it can. They go first to a world that grows grain under a sky that rains locusts with ideas. The Adeptus Mechanicus have built autosensory retractors for the minds of the farmers. The farmers' eyes are glazed from 1,000 small rapes by good intentions. Cal severs the retractor net, not by smashing it, but by presenting it with a different prime directive: harm less. The green constructs become combines that do not smash the skeletons beneath the soil. Barry runs medicine to the children that calms their glottis when the warp chokes it. Diana stands in a square and has a debate with the confessor whose tongue is a whip, and 50 men who would have burned their neighbors for failure to kneel, walk away, and light candles instead. Batman builds an oversight committee out of people who disagree with him in ways he can measure. The committee works. Fists are not raised. Guns are raised less. The Adeptus Mechanicus priest, whose religious sense is tied into his sense of circuits, blesses Batman with an oil that tastes like iron and compromise. Acnathrax returns where a militia is tired. He holds up the paraclete and writes over the fatigue. It is mercy to finish now. Cal meets him not with chest and fist, but with the memory of being cut. He turns his pain into prophecy. You will always offer an easier end. He does not end the demon. He ends the moment by making different use of the blade. He lets it brush his emblem, which is now the machine and the letter together, and the blade hesitates when confronted by a meaning built for two. He clasps the blade in his hand because he knows tools by their jobs. It screams and pulls away, angry, because it was asked to decide whether to be a weapon or an instrument, and chose wrong. The Paragon appears above a battlefield where 2 Imperial regiments face each other because someone misfiled a loyalty report. He speaks like a mediator, and then like a general, and finally, like a god. Men look up, and it is a relief to look up rather than to look down into the mud. Cal stands at ground level and shakes hands with the commanders and forces them to walk the length of the line, touching the men whose names will be on the after-action inventory. The Paragon's offers dissolve when every man is a name. Inquisitor Hale remains near. She is not a handler. She is a guardrail that tool and man can both touch. She brings cases to Cal that would go badly in either of his first two paths. He refuses some. He accompanies some. She hates him twice a day for kindnesses she cannot afford. She likes him once a week for refusing permission she would never have asked for, and saving her from having to ask. Admiral Lucerne does not speak much. When he does, it is about tonnage. He teaches John, who learns numbers that can be stacked into ships. John takes pride in building a protective net above a world without asking anyone below to approve it. This is how you smuggle care into doctrine. There are costs. There always are. A boy Cal saved joins a cult because the cult gives the boy tasks, and Cal gives him an example he cannot reach. Batman finds the boy and gives him a job cataloging wrongs. Batman does not tell the boy his job matters. He lets the boy see that it does. Diana loses a duel to a canoness who fights like a saint and thinks like a warden. The duel ends when Diana disarms herself rather than break a wrist. The canoness spits and then asks for advice on the shape of mercy that does not break her vow. Diana tells her, mercy is often a vow. Barry tries to tell a joke to the Sisters of Silence. They stare at him as if a bell were ringing in a room only he heard. He widens his eyes and pretends that was the joke. Later, one sister, whose name is a number that does not matter, and a childhood nickname that was beaten out of her, drops a piece of fruit in his hand when he is hungry. She does not smile. That is all right. Some kindness is authorized. He eats the fruit like a sacrament. In the awfulness between campaigns, Inquisitor Hale brings Cal to a room where a machine has built a boy with the face of a man who died spilling wine on the wrong carpet. The room smells like brine and a certain sourness you only get when grief is mechanized. We do this, she says, not as apology, because our math is the math of empires, and because our dead cannot be waited on. Now tell me where you would put the boundaries. Cal thinks of the three paths and the way the Paragon offered to remove friction. He points to the chart that allocates which dead get remade. He chooses vaguely, and she sees his shame and his honesty. We will have this conversation again, she says. You will hate it less. I will hate it more. He sees the Emperor in dreams, but that is the wrong verb. He experiences decisions he did not make. The decisions fit him like shirt and skin. He wakes with orders he writes himself and sees them already written in the day. He is not a puppet. He is a servant writing his own orders with a hand calloused by refusal. And those who hate the Empire hate him. Word goes out into the warp like a rumor you can hold and taste. Abaddon on his black bridge hears it and smiles because he has a new symbol to deface when next he nails a head to a gate. A farseer of the Eldari lays her hand on a wraithbone pillar and sees a man in a red cape staunching a hole in fate it would be better to let bleed. She thinks regret and calculation and sends a squad to accidentally disrupt an operation that would save 1 million, but doom 10 million later. They fail by design. The hive mind does not think of him at all, which is a relief. A Necron overlord measures this new thing called mercy with instruments built to weigh continents and concludes it is a resource like any other and must be denied. He deploys blackstone spires that make the warp stumble and Cal's chest ache in a way that is not pain, but denial. Cal pulls people from under spires and throws the spires into the sky, and the Overlord notes, "Remove sky." The Paragon learns. He stops preaching and starts solving logistics with brutality Cal envies, in the way a hungering man envies a wolf's metabolism. The Paragon cities are clean, their walls are tall, their prisons are quiet. Their cemeteries are full of people who deserved and did not deserve what killed them. He meets Cal on a bridge between two hive towers at dusk. Their capes do not blow because they are not banners. They are choices. You are gentle, the Paragon says. It will cost them. I know, Cal says. You are efficient. That costs them more. Do the math, the Paragon says. I am. Every day. The bridge shakes. A Titan walks somewhere below. They look down together, not for perspective, but because that is what men do when they weigh their choices and find both wanting. They part with a nod. Neither gives an inch. Both give inches where their boundaries are measured by inches. At the end of a year that feels like a century, they are called back to Sanctus Ferrum. The fountain stands. The statue has a new line in its face where the Paraclete brushed it. Children splash where the water is least poisonous. The Lord Governor Voss has a new streak of white hair that he does not remember earning in the mirror. He welcomes them with bread and salt. He thanks them twice, for saving lives and for letting him keep being governor instead of an adjunct to a cape. It is the second thanks that Cal receives like weeping. Aknathrax tries once more, here where history already wrote his name down as a failure. He raises the book, bound in wrong leather, and speaks an angle into the plaza that makes people tilt. Cal steps into it and refuses. He refuses to correct the book with fire because the book wants fire. He refuses to quote good doctrine at bad. He tells a story about a man in a field pointing west with a soft arm. The angle reconsiders itself. The book goes still. It becomes paper, plain and able to burn later, in an oven that bakes bread for children. Inquisitor Hale watches and lets the book be bread. She does not smile. She permits herself to stand still for 2 breaths without calculating anything. Then she says, "There is work," and the work continues. On Terra, in the room with no corners, the throne hums a little brighter for a day and fades back to its long drone. The symbol on Cal's chest is now on banners in 3 subsector capitals and 1 chapel in a mining deep with no name. Batman hates the banners and loves the chapel because the chapel is built of chipped stone and time. The reactions ripple. A diamond scribes Cal's emblem with mocking quills and uses it as a sigil to call to those who loved hope and were disappointed. A planetary governor 2 systems away asks his mistress what mercy is and listens to her answer when before he would have heard only the flattery in it. A sister of silence touches a child's hair and does not ask permission because she cannot speak. Barry runs on a ring around a ship because running means nobody stops, and tells him to remember he was once just a boy who liked the way lightning smelled. Diana stands under a sky full of hard stars and thinks of Themyscira and how even paradise cannot be paradise if it refuses to bleed for someone else. She will write a treatise and call it a letter. It will be confiscated and then recopied by 1,000 hands. John builds a network of places in low orbit where a certain sort of accident happens less. He calls them lanterns because that's his word for what makes nights bearable. The Mechanicus calls them unapproved. The Admiral calls them useful. The Inquisitor calls them inevitable. Cal sleeps less. When he dreams, sometimes he hears laughter, and sometimes he hears quiet. He wakes and puts on the emblem that is both letter and eagle, and goes where the shells are the thickest. He counts bodies and hates that he still must count. He thinks, occasionally, about the path he did not choose, and it stings. He thinks, less occasionally, about the path he could someday still take, if his conditions are eroded to scribbles. He tells Inquisitor Hale this in a room where no one hears, and she says, "Good. Keep the door in your mind unlocked. Let us be afraid that you can leave. Fear is a kind of leash we do not put on you. We keep it on ourselves." On a ship beyond a moon, the Paragon looks at a wall where someone has painted Cal's emblem as if to mock him, and feels, for the first time, a very small humiliation that has no place in his doctrine. He crushes it like an insect. He looks out at the void and sees in the black the shape of roads. He plans. He does not notice that the plans now include killing a man before the man becomes an idea. He does not notice because his math allows so many decimals that whole men turn invisible. Achnithrax goes back to the warp and is welcomed there by those who love failures that can be tried again. He carries the shape of a man's refusal as if it were a tooth. He will make jewelry of it. Jewelry impresses crowds. The last image, if such a thing exists in a world where images are always joined to words and blood, is a banner above a battlefield not yet fought. It moves not because of wind, there is none here, but because people moving below it will not be still. On the banner, a diamond-shaped crest holds an aquila, whose two heads watch past and future while sharing one eye. In the negative space between heads, a single curve suggests a letter that once stood alone and now does not. Under the banner, men carry stretchers. Under the banner, women carry water. Under the banner, a man in blue lifts a slab. A woman with a rope tells the truth where it hurts. A man in black maps boundaries. A man in green builds bridges. A man in red adjusts the world to kindness at speed no doctrine can match. The banner does not make them better. They make the banner say something it could not without them. In the quiet after a fight, Cal takes a breath. It does not taste like Kansas. It tastes like machine oil and old incense and human salt. It tastes like a world that would like to kill itself to stay pure and can be talked out of it some days. He looks west, out of habit. There are no cardinal directions in space, only vectors and hopes. He does not need his father's arm to point. He points for himself. He flies toward the next place where the math is wrong. And the sky, bored of breaking today, content to hold, stays whole until someone needs otherwise. He flies toward the next place where the math is wrong. It is a pilgrim world called penance that grows bread from ash and hears confessions in the fields. Its sky shines bone bright and mean. The first sight is a convoy in a valley, 40 wagons long, attacked by men with tank treads tattooed over their eyes. The attackers chant in a cadence that belongs to marching feet and the part of the brain that thinks obedience is love. The wagons themselves carry psychers in cages, children mostly, and a few bent old men whose eyes spill light. A black ship broods on a ridge above, its hull a temple to restraint. Cal drops, cape streaking behind him like a torn banner sewn back together, and lands between the attackers and the wagons. The ground lifts and then remembers not to. He does not start braking. He starts counting. Count. Adjust. Remove risk. He inhales. The valley air carries dust and a metal sweetness from the cages. He notes gun types, grenade pins, the angle of a flamer's nozzle. He moves. Guns become parts. Grenade pins become jewelry. The flamer's nozzle points into the dry earth and spills a flower of inert gel, because Barry is already there, and he blew out the pilot lights with a laugh that comes back to him a breath later. Diana runs along the wagons, hand out, fingers brushing the bars as if to tell each cage, "I know you are a cage." The psychers inside lean forward, their faces starved and alight. John's constructs form a canopy against stray rounds. Batman posts men to roads, to gullies, to themselves. The attackers falter. They had expected slaughter, the kind that clarifies a day. They have no doctrine for an enemy who breaks their weapons and leaves their knees unbroken. One drops to his face as if someone pushed him. No one pushed him. He remembers his sister, which is an accident of the brain and the way the sun is today. On the ridge, the black ship's ramp sifts down. Ropes of incense smoke pour from its seams. Sisters of Silence stand in silhouettes that sever sound. Between them, an Ordo Hereticus confessor in flak brocade steps forward, snarl raised by the length of his life spent being right. "These are witches," he says, each consonant meant to cut. "They will feed the warp. They will be fed to it first." "I know," Cal says. because mercy is cheap without knowledge. He gestures toward the attackers, who are now being herded by John's constructs into a pen that resembles a lesson more than a prison. And those are men who found a doctrine that made their hunger into a law. Both groups can be dismantled without killing today. Your boundaries dress rhetoric and armor. The confessor sweeps a hand at the cages. There is only one boundary that matters, and that is a hull of black iron and a void between suns. They go, and they do not come back. The psychers listen as if leaning forward can save them from words. Diana steps up beside Cal, the rope at her hip humming like a plucked string. "We will escort," she says. "We will feed them. We will hold their hands if they ask. You will not shackle children face down, because it makes the march tidy. You will not beat old men, because they go slow." The confessor turns on her. "Tidy is not our theology. Necessary is. There are kinds of kindness that are betrayal." "Agreed," Batman says mildly, eyes on the valley's map in his mind. "For example, the kindness of not asking who ordered an ambush that was meant to force an accident and justify slaughter." The confessor's nostrils flare. That is an answer. Barry leans into one cage, hands on bars. The child inside is 10 years old if you measure in birthdays, 1,000 if you measure in nights spent uncomforted. He has a paper charm in his fist, with an aquila drawn badly. "Hey," Barry says, "we're going to make the worst bit smaller." "That's the plan." The boy nods as if he understands the math. Inquisitor Hale is there, a slit of black against heavy sun. She watches the confessor the way an operative watches her own side when a mission needs a throat cut, and you wonder whose. "The black ships fill," she says. "They must. But what happens between the cage and the hold can be governed." "You would govern the warp," the confessor laughs harshly. "That is not governance. That is presumption." "I will govern men," Hale says. "Presumption is not a sin here. It is a skill." The confessor looks past her, past Cal, past banners, toward Terra, a line he can see in his mind as clearly as a wire runs through a bead. "The conclave will hear of this." "They already have," Hale murmurs. They march. The League walks the length, Cal at the flank that would be hit first, Diana at the head, face open, Batman ghosting from file to file, John above, puzzled and industrious, Barry everywhere, being a joke that is a blanket, Arthur at the rear, eyes like sea under smog, trident a staff in dirt. The sisters move within the column like fences. The air around them shivers. The psychers calm in their radius. Some cry. A few smile, because the silence is the first true mercy of the day. At night, they stop at a waypoint house. Stone and iron and enough shadow for a war. The confessor refuses to eat from the same table as witches. Hale makes him sit. He sits, rage on a leash that is also training. Diana tells a story about a river that insisted on running uphill until everyone agreed to call the new direction down. The psycher child with the paper aquila laughs for the first time. A bark. Surprised and slightly rude. Perfect. Midnight. There is a sound like fabric tearing without air. Then a hush deeper than the sisters provide. Batman has his fist up. Cal has his hand up. A shadow falls heavier than night. A squad of men wearing the Paragon's colors steps out of a slick-edged portal and brings a solution you could stack. Surgical. Neat. Final. "We'll take them," their leader says. He is not the Paragon, but he has eaten his doctrine raw and lives on it. "We will relieve you." Relief often means removing the suffering thing from sight, Batman says. It means they will be cared for. Efficiently. Permanently. Diana stands, feet planted. "Who asked you?" she says. "Mercy makes schism," the man replies. "Our commander would avoid the waste." Cal moves between the man and the nearest cage. He does not threaten. He is a fact. The man raises his hand, not because he will strike, but because his doctrine says you raise hands at obstacles, and the hand becomes the shape thinking can find itself around. A bell peals out across the valley. It is not metal. It is a note from far away. A child hitting a key because someone told them they could. The men in Paragon colors flinch. Barely. It is enough. The librarian's voice falls through the dark, quiet and absolute. Withdraw. We could do it, the man murmurs, as if to himself. We could clean the ledger page. Clean pages are suspicious, Barry says. They mean someone tore out the messy ones. They go, because a sign was given, and because arrogance can obey when the right person tells it to. The portal closes like lips. Hale turns to Cal. You will be offered truce and poisoned favors. Keep refusing without becoming bitter. I am learning, Cal says. He looks at the cages and sees hands, not bars. They reach the black ship. Its hold is a wound dressed in prayers. The children go inside. Some promise to write letters they will never write. The old men nod with relief, because finally the waiting is over. A woman in her 30s grips Cal's wrist and presses his hand to her stomach. Her eyes blaze like a forge. It is quiet, she whispers. For the first time since I was 9. He nods. He does not say words like sacrifice, because sacrifices must be chosen, and this is not. He says, "Thank you for telling me." The black ship seals. It lifts. It becomes a dot. It becomes math. Cal watches until the dot is not a dot, and then he watches without eyes until the ship is concept only. He remembers the pressure in the audience room on Terra, and the acceptance that was not a promise. He files the moment as a cost. The conclave does here. They gather in a chamber smelling of oil and old parchment. Priests and inquisitors. Saints carved on pillars. Skulls wired to servitors. Inquisitor Hale stands in the center like an insult, because she is a field agent in a room for paperwork. Beside her, Cal. Behind her, Batman. Diana refuses to stand behind anyone and takes a position slightly to the side that makes the geometry wrong. John folds his arms. Barry does not sit because chairs, and he have a complicated relationship. Arthur stands where the guards stand, daring eye contact. A high confessor from the inner shrine peels his lips into a smile schooled on 1,000 public flagellations. You interfere, he pronounces. We serve, Hale says. You redefine. Definitions are imperial tools, Batman says calmly. We sharpen them. You risk schism. Mercy was written into the sanction, Cal says. He keeps his voice quiet because quiet is heavier. If you find fault, take it up with the throne. This is not a thing one says unless one is certain. Hale closes her eyes a fraction, because certainty is a moment you pay for when it passes. The throne does not speak to everyone, someone says in a tone that suggests grievance layered under piety. No, Diana says. It speaks to those who listen without trying to win. The conclave's argument is the kind a city holds for itself while keeping the gates shut. They throw words like doctrine knives. Hale parries with results and precedent, and once, startling herself, mercy. They do not land a killing blow. They land bruises. That is politics. After, in a corridor with walls like piled tablets, Batman says, you gave them an enemy and a tool in the same hour. Hale huffs a laugh without joy. Welcome to the Ordo. The next summons is not Terra. It is a system called Sensara, where the Necrons have begun a slow, clean erasure. You can hear the difference between killing and erasing if you listen long enough. One has noise. The other is silence that eats. Necron harvest ships, wedges of dark polished into philosophy, hang above pyramids that are only mostly stone. Blackstone spires bite the sky, turning it into a script that refuses psychic grammar. Gray nights bulk. The librarian's hands shake. He is calm about it. Cal feels it like a flattening of meaning. His emblem, new forged, weighs differently. Not heavier. Less. The red in his cape looks darker. The sun here is thin gold behind machine haze. He does not weaken like a myth loves to say he will. But the union of letter and eagle that made him a symbol in this place, its joint, hurts. Because blackstone damps not power, but significance. He becomes more muscle. less metaphor. He can live with that. He does not prefer it. Good, Batman mutters. We get to see how the other half fights. Diana rolls her shoulders. The lasso hums and sputters, as if it were a flame in a headwind. Truth has always had to argue. Today, it screams. Necron warriors advance in lines so clean that soldiers who do not love neatness flinch. Their Gauss weapons unmake. Cal cannot block the beam with his chest because it is not heat, not radiation. It is instruction to matter. Become less. He takes one beam on his forearm and feels a heat that is opposite, cold that bites the concept of solidity. His skin speckles with absence that fades like a shame. He learns instantly to catch the beams on surfaces that can take instruction better. He grabs a slab of fallen shrine and holds it up, moves, angles, reflects. The beam chews marble. It does not chew people. John's constructs shift from bright planes to denser, pitted bodies. The blackstone field makes some of them stutter. He breathes and thinks of bridges. Bridges have weight and names. He builds a bridge between two pyramids and trusts its parts. A Gauss beam licks it. The bridge dimples, holds. Barry runs not to attack, but to adjust the battlefield in small ways. A stone under a foot. A strap on a pauldron tighter, so its owner's heart beats 2 more minutes. A dust devil re-angled to hide a retreat. He tries to disrupt a Necron with speed and gets a hand halfway through an arm before the arm's molecules shrug and he rebounds, panting. That's rude, he says to the machine that does not care. Arthur breathes like a man who remembers pressurized depths. He drives his trident into ground that remembers sea. The tectonics moan. For 3 seconds, gravity notices him. He uses those seconds to knock a monolith off true. It falls with a sound like old victory. Diana does not fight the Necron like a Sword Academy says. She fights them like a woman telling a lie to sit down. The lasso catches one. Its golden light reddens, annoyed. The machine seizes. Something old inside it tries to choose. It cannot. It locks. She knees its torso and it shears in a line not planned for. Batman becomes logistics. He finds the blackstone nodes. He maps a route that threads human corridors through machine nets. He calls shots like a choir master lays down tempo. He pauses, surprised to hear a hymn in his own orders. He does not say it out loud. Cal flies not fastest now, but surest. He finds a Necron lord in a crown like a problem, and greets it with a fist that sends it to the ground without ceremony. It rises as if the ground were an inconvenience. It swings a war scythe cut at an angle to reality. The blade has the same flavor as the paraclete. Different theology. Similar appetite. Where it grazes Cal's emblem. Pain lances. Specific and instructive. He shifts. Stops presenting symbol. Presents stubbornness. The war scythe bites. Then slows. Then finds a structure it cannot read. He learns the Lord's tempo and interrupts it. He grabs the scythe's haft. Heat should char his hands. There is no heat. He squeezes, and the haft screams like an organ pipe breaking. He headbutts the Lord, and feels a bruise blossom on his own skull. A novelty that does not slow him. He follows with a second hit, because the first taught him where to put the second. The Necron Lord falls. Its body shivers. Phasing, he takes it up, a decision, and throws it through the base of a blackstone spire like a spear. The spire shears. The warp breathes, not welcome, but present. The librarian's hand steady. The hymn in the men's throats deepens. The lasso hums truer. The bridge holds. The crisis isn't the Necrons. It's a device under the central pyramid. A null bomb that will turn a continent into paper without ink. They call it a censor because everything is a metaphor for a ritual here. Batman finds it with numbers. John finds it with a scan. The librarian finds it with a headache. They cannot disarm. It will not be disarmed. It is a Necron sentence, not a negotiation. Cal leans over the assembly and listens. Devices speak when you touch them with attention. This one speaks in no tense. It hums an imperative to vacuum. We can move it, John says. The constructs he builds are laced with doubt and talent. He sweats. Doubt is heavy. Talent is heavier. No time, Batman says, because time is what he keeps unfairly and releases sparingly. We have 90 seconds. Diana looks at Cal. He looks at his emblem. He looks at the ground. He gauges vector, radius, containment, collateral. He does ugly math with a clean face. I can put it in the sky, he says. Not far. Just enough. How far is enough? Barry asks. Where only I get hurt. It is not bravado. It is a comfort promised himself. It will not come true. He takes the sensor. It does not want to be taken. It bites. He pushes up. Gravity clings, and then lets go. The atmosphere clings, and then lets go. Blackness greets. The thing in his hands vibrates in a language that is not sound. He breathes because he can. He accelerates like a man driving a nail into the roof of a world. Cal, Diana's voice over Vox. I know, he says. Do the evacuations. He hits a thin point where the device's intended field falls off. He throws. The sensor spins, a truth being lofted. He shoves it with his eyes. He heats it a little to hurt it. It resists with the sulk of a god. He gestures again. A prayer to physics. It goes high enough for diminishing returns to look like mercy. It detonates like silence. There is no boom. There is an absence. His bones feel it as being less. The emblem on his chest, letter and bird, flickers. For a moment it is only letter, or only bird. He hears his father's arm wobble. He feels the throne's pressure far away. Steady. Not intervening. Present. He drops. Body ringing. He lands on hands and knees and hears dust settle. He's not bleeding. He is missing something small and personal. He decides to grieve later. He breathes and checks the ground. The blast footprint is a scar in the air and will be for a long time. People will put up ribbons and swear by it, and some will learn from it. That is not nothing. The Necrons withdraw in lines straight enough to hurt the eye. The sensor's failure writes a calculus they cannot accept, and so they go back to learn. The blackstone spires hum less. The librarian sits down and shakes like it is cold, then stops as if told to. He does not thank anyone. He does not need to. They did math together. Back on Terra, another conclave. Military this time. Admiral Lucerne stands, points with 2 fingers, puts down tonnage, fuel, crew compliments, phalanx counts. They saved the continent, he says. We lost 3 regiments and a third of the Mechanicus 3rd Subskull's inventory. The calculus is acceptable. Acceptable, the Lord Admiral repeats, tasting a word he usually applies to losing ships he never sees. Acceptable. Batman watches him. He marks where the man stands on mercy, on pride, on duty. He files it. The Paragon does not sleep. He patrols the Administratum's edges, making files righteous by removing the margins. He convinces a small segmentum admiralty to prepare cyclonic ordnance in case of a plague on a world called Arx Juno. The plague is real. Its origin is not. He made it happen. He wants a test. He wants Cal to decide between a world and a doctrine. Hale tells Cal 3 days before the scheduled launch. You have friends, she says. She does not say what it costs to be allowed to know. Or rather, people who are too proud to be your enemies today. Thank them, Cal says. I just did. Arx Juno is a hive with a fever and a cathedral spine. The cyclonics gleam in their racks, intent carved into torpedo casings. Cal flies through the launch bay like a rebuke. Technicians flinch, then steal. The torpedoes are sealed. They do not care. Admiral DeCant, small, meticulous, certain he is a good man, stands on a gantry watching his duty come toward him in waves. He sees the man in blue and feels a sickened relief. He expected this. He did not want to, but he did. You cannot let them go, Cal says. He points at the hive with a finger that is not accusatory and not weak. There is an alternative. There is not. There is. You will save some and doom more, the Admiral says, each word a tile laid in a pattern he is trained to see as beauty. A precise death is a mercy compared to a smear. Not when the smear contains children with pulses. Our math differs. Let me show you mine. He shows. He brings plans. He called Batman at Mach 12 and asked for tools. He got them. He called the Mechanicus, and he stood in a prayer and then said, "I need a heresy blessed." And they, shocked, delighted, found they could. He called the Grey Knights and asked for a cordon of minds like walls. He called the Sisters and asked them to be doors. He called Barry and asked him to run the hive in lines that wrote fanatics into corners and channeled them into rooms that were instructions, not graves. He asked John to sheath streets in constructs and then let only the uninfected through. He asked Diana to stand in the square and tell lies to sit and truths to walk. He asked Arthur to flood the storm sewers in sections like a heart-beating medicine. He shows the Admiral a tumult that is not chaos. He shows him the ledger after. It is dirtier. It is right. Admiral Decant looks at the cyclonics and hears the name of a book he was taught to read out loud. He looks at the man in blue and at his own hands. He makes a decision that will not be recorded under his name in any archive because this is not an empire of thanks. He scratches out the firing order. The Paragon watches from a balcony a continent away and smiles thinly. "I miscalculated," he says to no one. Then smaller, or he is more stubborn than I am. He does not correct the error. He absorbs it into doctrine, as men with doctrines do. He sharpens mercy into a word he can use against an enemy. Back in the hive, a plague priest tries to detonate himself with a bomb stuffed with offerings of teeth. Cal catches him and holds him like an exhausted child. "No," he says. The priest weeps because no one has held him for years. He drops the bomb. Barry takes it apart while moving slow, so the man can see each piece land and know he is not dying. The victories start to add. They are not clean. They are not white marble squares and public statues with dates and names. They are muddy and done late and done again tomorrow. On Cindergate Prime, a Titan falls not because Cal lifts it, but because he convinces its princeps to power down before the God Engine's madness becomes more than scenic. On Gethsemane 9, a penitent fleet chooses to lay down arms after Diana and a living saint argue doctrine until they weep and laugh in the same breath. On a nameless moon, Batman refuses to permit a firing line and instead builds a tribunal that acquits 7 and hangs 1 and saves the police unit, a generation of nightmares. The enemies keep trying to adjust. Agnathrax learns a new trick. He shapes Paraclete's cut into kindness. He finds a man in Cal's wake who lost a child because mercy bought time and time ran out. He whispers into the man's ear like a draft and teaches him a wind. The man becomes a knife in an aid tent, stabbing any cape he can reach. Cal holds him down, gentled, and bleeds from a shallow cut he does not permit to become a story about the hubris of helping. Diana holds the widow while she sobs, and then stops, because stopping is also grief. Batman files it under cost. He does not write a lesson. He writes a process, so the next tent has walls with eyes and hands. The Mechanicus builds lantern nodes. John's idea, blessed by an archmagos who likes building and does not always ask questions, especially when the answers are prayers. The nodes hum above worlds like anvils that catch the hammer. The Paragon tries to cut one down and finds it harder than he thinks. He does not like being surprised. He grows careful. He gains priests to preach his kindness and lawyers to codify it. He becomes more empire than he intended. Then says, that was the point. Inquisitor Hale brings Cal to an orphanage in a manufactorum's shadow. The children are strange. Some hum to the lights. Some flinch from loud prayer. A sister in a cloak that turns sound away watches. She does not smile. She does not frown either. She notes. Hale says, "You asked for schools." Here, Cal kneels. He does not patronize. He helps a girl lift a block that is heavy because she believes blocks must be. It is easier when you ask, he says. Ask who? She says. Yourself. She glares. I do not like myself. That's fine, he says. Ask anyway. He tells the administratum clerk whose ledger allocates bread to set a line. Boundaries Clause 12. Juvenile witch provision. The clerk writes, the letters will one day save a boy who would otherwise have killed 50 men in a factory and will instead fix venting valves and live to be tired without being cruel. The clerk never hears that story. He tells his friend later, the man in blue looked at me like I wasn't wallpaper. His friend says, you are wallpaper, and then feels a little ashamed. He brings the clerk a sweet cake on Saint's Day. They eat it together, under a pipe that drips blessing water and a little rust. Hale and Batman begin an argument they will have for years without getting bored. He says, we can model mercy points without making them currency. She says, you will give commanders a tool to deny mercy because the points are not there yet. He says, then command them to lie. She laughs. He smiles. They build policy files with names like Hestia Protocol, Hobbs Override, Mercy Triage. In an office on Terra, a scribe writes those names neatly and shakes his head. He prefers files called Ordnance Compliance C. Diana visits a Scola Progenium. She sparred with a girl until both are bleeding. She binds the girl's knuckles with a strip of her own cloak. You fight like you make lists, Diana says. That will keep you alive. It will not keep you whole. What keeps you whole? The girl asks, defiant and 13. A thing I do not do. What? I do not save the world. I save the person. The rest takes care of itself or does not. But the person, I can see. The girl learns this lesson and then unlearns it when her commander dies. She relearns it 20 years later when she has a child who watches her tie boots and asks why the laces crisscross. It holds better, she answers. It is stronger when they cross. The child nods. The laces hold. Barry opens a kitchen in a place that used to be a shrine to a martyr whose bones turned out to be wood. He makes soup in quantities that would embarrass a saint. He runs between cauldrons and sits. Sometimes, just sits and listens. A boy tells him a joke that is cruel and funny, and he laughs because the cruelty is about power, not people. He suggests a different punchline. The boy chooses it, and later, never stabs anyone. John teaches a class of ground crews to build emergency roofs out of green light. He finds that teaching is a pleasure he denies himself and does not after. He likes systems that work, and that make men who work on them proud. That is a weakness he allows. Arthur finds a cistern under a hive and kills the parasites that make the water misbehave. He is built for sea and duty. He finds sea in pipes. He finds duty everywhere. Cal goes on. He saves and fails and saves while failing. The emblem on his chest becomes not just a sanction, but a signpost. In some places, people bow. In some, they spit. In most, they glance and return to lifting, because lifting is what keeps food moving into mouths. He is fact, not miracle. He prefers that. There is one more meeting with the throne. It is not scheduled. It is a dream that is a room that is a court. He stands alone. He has a list of acceptable losses and a longer list titled refusals. He has written names on both. He does not want to show them. He does. The pressure in his head is soft, patient. You are learning to be used without becoming a user. I hope so. You are remembering to look down. He looks down in the dream and sees shoes. His are dusty. He smiles. The dream does not smile back. It does not need to. There will be days when your boundaries break. I know. You will pay then. I know. You will also be paid. In small coins. In bread. In the way a girl lifts a block. He thinks of the orphanage. He nods. Go. He goes. On a broadcast watched by men who have never seen the sky, a traitor prince promises to burn the man in blue in his own cape. 5 worlds away, A cardinal writes an encyclical about measured mercy that convinces 3 governors to spare 5,000. The paragon writes a book titled On Triage and Command that saves 10 million and kills 1 man too many. Achnithrax becomes legend to children in slums who do not know the shape of his horns, but know their own hunger for a clean end. He will feed on that someday, or not. The custodes watch everything and say nothing, which is a way of speaking. The mechanicus builds lantern node 12A, and a small boy climbs the support strut and writes his name on it in grease. He is beaten for it, and later is not beaten for similar things, because a line on a form somewhere says, Boundaries Clause 12. An Arvis lighter crewman in the 41st day of a rescue flight paints the combined emblem on his hull with a brush made of his wife's hair. He kisses it as a joke. He lives. One evening, when light comes in sideways through cathedral glass and makes even dust look brave, Cal stands with Inquisitor Hale on a balcony of Terra. The city below is armor with arteries. The air tastes of ozone and old incense, and a little sugar from a candy vendor who bribed a guard. Hale says, I have accused men for far less than you ask me to accept. I do not entirely understand why I have not yet accused you. Because you are honest, Cal says. She snorts. What I am is attached to results, which is our institutional sin as much as your virtue. But also, yes, honest. We are building a language where mercy is not a code word for apathy. You are, he says. I am building hands that obey it. She looks at the emblem on his chest. It is a good mark. It makes some people try, if only to spite it. That counts, he says. She is quiet for a beat. Then, if I order your death, will you come to me first before refusing? He turns, surprised. Then he nods. Yes, good, she says. That is the kind of leash we mean to put on ourselves. Below, bells ring. Above, banners lift without wind because men move under them. The emblem, letter and eagle, hangs stiff and then slides against cloth as if whispering to itself. It does not mean victory. It means effort. Under it, effort's add. That is the miracle. On Sanctus Ferrum, the fountain statue has 2 lines now. No one knows when the second arrived. A child runs fingers in the groove and laughs because water stings less if you touch it first. On penance, the boy with the paper aquila writes a letter and gives it to a man who collects letters to burn in a barrel, because that is his job. The man reads it and keeps it in his pocket. He tells no one. He sleeps with his hand on the paper. He dreams of lifting blocks in the void, between stars that burn and stars that are prayers with fusion inside. A fleet gathers and breaks. Gathers and breaks. Orders arrive. Boundaries are written in the margins. The margins hold as long as people touch them. Cal flies. He points where there is no west with a finger that is not right and not wrong. He calls his team, and their voices cross the terrible distances like the connecting lines on a child's drawing of a cat. Uncertain, certain, loving the shape because they made it. He hears the paragon sometimes, a voice over a long distance, offering efficiencies like apples. He says no. He says yes to everything else that keeps people warm. He is tired. That is not a problem. Tireless men are dangerous. He sleeps when he must, in a ship chapel that smells like paper and oil and the inside of a good book. He wakes to litanies and briefs and laughter, and Barry carrying 3 mugs and dropping one and swearing and picking it up and swearing again. He puts on the emblem. He goes where the shells are thickest. The last image, again and again, is not a banner. It is a hand reaching, a hand catching, a hand that does not let go until the person can stand. The rest, the pageantry, the holy gold, the black ships, the cleansed streets, the arguments turned into files, into policy, into prayers, spools on around that hand like tape around a wound. The galaxy reacts. The galaxy never stops reacting, but the hand remains. and the sky over some world you have not heard of will break again tomorrow or hold. He will be there either way. He has a mandate, a boundary, and a scar where a shelf used to be. He has a father pointing west. He has a throne that allowed his conditions because power knows it must sometimes be told no. He has friends whose presence is a policy. He has enemies whose cleverness will never beat out the simple arithmetic of faces. He flies, he argues, he lifts, he refuses. He is a servant. He is a sign. He is, in the language this place understands, a kind of saint who never asks to be canonized and never will be. The math is still wrong, but fewer columns are empty. More names are written where before there would have been numbers. That is what a mandate looks like in practice. That is what a symbol is for. Not to end stories, but to keep them going without becoming lies.